cancel the tax increase on middle-class Americans that's due in 25 days. Let's not have it. And let's extend jobless benefits for those who are diligently trying to find a job in this difficult economy. Let's find time to do something for the American people today. I yield back the balance.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Florida.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, while this body wastes its time debating yet another bill that does nothing to create jobs or help the middle class, the American people are looking for action from us. We need to stop supporting handouts for wealthy corporations and pass an extension of the payroll tax and unemployment benefits immediately. Despite saying for months, if not years, that tax cuts are their most important priority, the majority has failed to act on a critical extension of the payroll tax, even though it would save the average American family $1,500 a year. 400,000 jobs will be lost if we do not pass this payroll tax extension. The majority has also failed to act on extending unemployment insurance benefits, even though UI has kept 900,000 kids out of poverty last year. In fact, the number of Americans in poverty would have doubled last year if the unemployment insurance benefits had not been extended. And at least 200,000 jobs will be lost if the majority blocks an extension of benefits. But instead of acting on these two important priorities, what does the Republican majority spend its time on? We have seen them protect wasteful tax breaks for corporate jet and racehorse owners, corporate subsidies for big agriculture, big oil, special tax treatment for Wall Street, millionaires and billionaires, and now this misguided bill, which would undermine our regulatory system to the detriment of everything from food safety to protecting the environment without doing anything to create jobs. Time and again, the majority has shown that they will go to any lengths to side with the wealthiest 1% of Americans while turning their backs on middle class and working families. To take one more example, this past week Democrats introduced a payroll tax cut for 160 million people, offset by raising taxes on 350,000 millionaires. But the Republican majority instead put forward a package that would slash the federal workforce, raise Medicare premiums, curtail the social safety net. Instead of just having America's wealthiest families pay their fair share of taxes, the majority would rather see more lost public jobs and less support for middle-class families, all in order to continue a tax cut that independent economists agree is critical for our economy. Keep in mind, the Republican mantra in recent memory has always been that tax cuts never need to be offset. And a year ago, they said the same of a payroll tax cut. They've now changed their tune. American families deserve better leadership than this. Right now, Congress should be doing everything in its power to create jobs, rebuild our schools and infrastructure, support our small businesses, get our economy moving again. That means passing an extension and expansion of the payroll tax cut. It means passing an extension of the unemployment insurance benefits. Working to create jobs, that's our job. We do not have the luxury to waste America's time catering to the wealthiest interest in our society and considering ill-conceived bills such as this one. I yield back.
Gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Schkowski. Good job.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentlewoman for yielding to me. I am really confused. I know that many of my Republican colleagues have signed a pledge that said that never will they raise taxes on anybody, the Grover Norquist pledge. I think it's a silly idea to sign such a thing, but most have done that. But yet it does seem that when it comes to middle-class tax cuts, there's this little hesitation going on. Do we really mean cutting taxes for the middle class? Do we mean preserving tax cuts for the middle class? Or are we just talking about the wealthiest Americans? Right now, if we don't move ahead with extending the payroll tax cut, that's what all working families pay. Their payroll taxes. You know, we hear, oh, that the wealthy are paying all the income taxes. Yeah, most people would like to pay income taxes, but they definitely pay payroll taxes if they're working, and they're risking 160 million Americans who would not get tax relief if we don't extend the payroll tax cut for working families. And so we need to do that before we leave. But instead, we're talking about some way to stop any kind of regulations, further health and safety regulations, making it hard to do that. I got a letter from someone talking about the unemployment insurance and extending those benefits. He says, this is from John in my district, I'm a Desert Storm veteran and lost my job October 21st, 2010. I've been drawing unemployment and now on extended unemployment benefits. I, like millions of Americans, would rather be working 80 hours a week if possible. The job market is scary, but what's worse is the thought that we might be without that last bit of a safety net come the end of December. Can I have...
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Yeah, that would be great. Another minute would be great.
Gentlelady's recognized for an additional 1 minute.
So this is what John said. The job market is scary, but what's worse is the thought that we might be without that last bit of a safety net come the end of December. These benefits for many is the difference between having a roof over your head and living on the streets. He says, I just hope you can encourage your fellow House members to put the livelihood of millions of Americans above their petty politics. Above the petty politics. That's what we're facing right now. If we extend unemployment insurance benefits, it's not just good for John and his family. It's not just good for the hundreds of thousands of people that would lose their unemployment benefits, over 500,000 in January. It is also good for the economy. Every dollar generates $1.52 in economic activity in the country. These are the things that the American people at this holiday season are worrying about, are afraid of. He calls it scary. He's afraid. And we're dealing with this pettiness right now. Let's get over it and on with the business of the people.
Time has expired.
I yield back.
Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to my fellow rules member, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from Utah is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I thank you for the time, and Mr. Speaker, I will apologize in advance for actually talking on topic here. In 1791, the second session of Congress, John Page was a congressman from Virginia, and he objected to his peers who wanted to leave and let the designation of postal routes be left to the President. They trusted the President, justifiably, but John Page threatened his colleagues by saying that if we do so, he will move to adjourn and leave all the objects of legislation to the President's sole consideration and direction. Now, the issue at hand back in 1791 was not necessarily what roads and routes should take place, even though they did have an economic impact. The issue was who should designate those roads, because every rule and regulation is, by definition, a legislative function. It is not a function of administration that should be given to the President or the bureaucracies that are created because of it. It is a congressional function, that we do not take the time to make the details in our particular piece of legislation. When we simply ask in our legislation that a secretary in a department shall have the power to write rules and regulations and then leave it at that, we are abrogating our responsibility. Country of origin labeling sounded like a great idea. We should know what if we're buying American beef. Even though it was passed before I became a member of Congress, it was my 8th year in Congress before they were able to write the rules, because Congress did not take the time and effort to go through the details of understanding what we were doing when we were passing legislation. The states, my home state, has an administrative review committee that reviews every rule and regulation, because these are rules and regulations that our people must obey, and if they don't, they are subject to jail and fines, and it is done by a nameless executive bureaucracy that has no accountability to the people by ballot box, nor do they have it to us. We can simply say, well, I'm sorry about this situation. They over there did it, instead of taking the time to do our responsibility. I'm told that we need experts over in the executive branch to do this. The Founding Fathers designed this situation in this country so that people could make judgments for themselves. The idea of needing experts only came in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when an individual who eventually became president wrote a book about Congress without ever having visited Congress, and in that he claimed this balance of powers, this separation of responsibilities, was, in his words, constitutional witchcraft. From that time on, we decided to abrogate legislative responsibility and simply give it to the other branch. Like it's one of those simple things. Congress has passed 16 job bills in the House and sent them over where the Democrat majority in the Senate has refused to deal with any of those bills. Congress is now also dealing with a variety of regulation bills which harm our ability to be economically competitive and harm our ability to actually build new jobs, and once again, the Democrat majority in the Senate has failed to do that. This is our time and responsibility to look forward to this situation, to take our role and responsibility and pass this particular bill because, like John Page said, it is our job, it's our responsibility. We should accept that responsibility. I yield back.
Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire of my colleagues if he has further speakers?
Yes, I do. One more.
All right. I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Florida.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Duffy.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the gentleman yielding. As I sit in the House floor here, I listen to the debate, and I hear a lot of conversations that are off topic. We're talking on the other side of the aisle about payroll taxes and unemployment extension. This is really a conversation about regulations that affect American businesses' ability to compete, expand, grow, and create jobs. This REINS Act is about holding members of Congress, elected men and women, accountable to the people who sent them here to do their work, not to empower bureaucrats in Washington to pass rules that kill jobs all across this country. Just yesterday, there was a press release in my district where one of our coal power plants has given notice that they're going to lay off 74 people because of regulations coming from this town. And you talk a lot about the 99%. These are part of the 99%. People that are now not going to have a job because of regulations and rules that are shutting down our power sources in Wisconsin. And so you can advocate for unemployment, and I'm happy that you're doing it, because your rules and regulations and the policies that you advocate for are costing 74 people in my district to now go on unemployment. That's unacceptable. Let's advocate for pro-growth policies that are going to help American businesses, entrepreneurs, and manufacturers to compete in a global competition. If we continue down this path, we are going to see more businesses go overseas with more jobs for the people that work in our districts. So with that, I think we should all have a real conversation about the REINS Act and not about payroll tax and unemployment extension. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Gentleman from Wisconsin yields. Gentlelady from New York.
I reserve.
Gentlelady from New York reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
I have no other speakers. We're ready to close.
All right. I'm prepared to close as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, the majority's
recognized.
prioritization of special interests over the economy goes beyond their crusade against government protections for our clean air and water, safe food, and workplaces. Not only has the majority refused so far to pass an extension of the payroll tax holiday, meaning even though we're still struggling to recover from a recession, the average American family will see a $1,000 increase in their taxes on January. They've refused so far to extend unemployment benefits for the 2.1 million Americans whose benefits will run out in the coming months if Congress does not act. Congress has never allowed emergency extended benefits to expire when the jobless rate has been anywhere close to its current level of 8.6%. Some Republicans like to argue that unemployment benefits give people a disincentive to work. But how are people supposed to take jobs that don't exist? Believe me, most of the people who are unemployed in our country right now would much rather get a job, but they can't find one. There are still roughly 6.5 million fewer jobs in the economy today than when the Great Recession started in 2007. So we're supposed to let them and their children starve or face possible eviction or foreclosure? All of the money that the unemployed receive in benefits goes right back into the economy when they buy groceries, clothes, and health care. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that allowing those federal unemployment benefits to expire would hurt consumer demand and thereby cost the U.S. economy 528,000 jobs. And the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has indicated that providing extended unemployment benefits is one of the most effective job creation strategies available during a period of high joblessness, stating, quote, "Households receiving unemployment benefits tend to spend the additional benefits quickly, making this option both timely and cost-effective in spurring economic activity and employment," end quote. The choices couldn't be any clearer that are facing us today. That's why, Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule requiring we vote on an unemployment benefit extension and vote on the payroll tax holiday extension for next year before we leave for holidays. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record, along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
And, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no, defeat the previous question so that we can do the right thing for working families and the millions of Americans looking for jobs. I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady from New York yields back. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, an editorial in the Wall Street Journal stated that the REINS Act, this act that we're talking about, would revolutionize government in practice and help restore the representative democracy that our founders intended. Profound words. While discussing regulatory reform, Rain Cruz of the Competitive Enterprise Institute and contributor to Forbes magazine said that reaffirming Congress's accountability to voters for agencies' most costly rules is a basic principle of good government. And Jonathan Adler, a professor of law at Case Western Reserve University School of Law, said in a congressional hearing earlier this year that the REINS Act offers a promising mechanism for disciplining federal regulatory agencies and enhancing congressional accountability for federal regulations. The REINS Act brings accountability back to the regulatory process. I would agree that some regulations are unnecessary. We all want clean air and clean water. There's no doubt that we need that. We need safe and healthy environment. We need safe food. But if we want to protect ourselves and family, but regulations at what cost? Through the rulemaking process, the EPA has put a new burdensome standard on water quality in Florida alone. The numeric nutrient rule the EPA wants to overtake the state's water system. And because they're Washington bureaucrats trying to create D.C. solution to Florida, the requirements they set the state of Florida is scientifically impossible to reach given our state's natural phosphorus levels in our waters. Compliance will require an investment of billions of dollars that will be passed on to whom? But the Florida taxpayers, of course, effectively resulting in a new tax levied on all Floridians. Another analysis estimates the EPA rulemaking will impose statewide costs ranging from $3.1 to $8.4 billion per year for the next 30 years. And put that in perspective, Florida's total budget is only $64 billion annually. The REINS Act is what people in Florida need and what people in the country need if we're going to keep the executive agency's rulemaking in check. You know, we've heard about a number of issues on this House floor. We heard about, as it relates to unemployment, in the employment tax holiday. The issue, though, isn't what's in front of us today. The issue is about the REINS Act. It's really about getting government off the backs of people. It's about making Congress accountable for the actions of the agencies that have their authority granted through Congress. It's not the other way around. Regulatory agencies don't enact laws for Congress. Congress enacts laws. Congress enacts and gives the authority to those that regulate, but Congress can't walk away from its authority to oversee the rules, particularly the major rules, that are promulgated by these agencies, that are costing us jobs, that are costing us billions of dollars every year. You've heard about it from all of my colleagues that spoke on this side of the aisle. You know, I don't know when Congress lost its way. Representative Bishop talked about it years and years ago, but Congress did lose its way. It's so much easier just to pass a law and say, you know what, let the regulatory folks figure out how this is going to shake out at the end. That's not what we were elected to do. We were elected not only to pass laws, but to make sure that the regulations that are proposed by those agencies that have the authority from this Congress is responsible to the people. We need to be responsible to the people that elected us, not the other way around, not responsible to bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. It's what I hear from all the businesses in my district. It's what I hear from the people that I represent. They want government to get out of the way, not end all regulations like you hear some of my friends across the aisle say. That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about congressional review before it actually comes to pass, that we stand up as a body and say, you know what, this is just not good for America. Keystone Pipeline is a perfect example of a jobs bill. They keep talking about the lack of jobs bill. Had the Keystone Pipeline come to fruition, that the President has pushed off until 2013, that's 25,000 immediate jobs to create and construct that pipeline, and 100,000 new jobs within the areas of Texas and Louisiana as it relates to the processing of that oil. Last time I looked, Canada was a friend. We buy oil from countries that hate us. And here we turn our back. And you know what Canada said? You know, China is ready to step in and help them out. Is that really what we want? Or do we want to bring jobs to America? Mr. Speaker, with all that's been said, we're to the point where we need to talk about regulations, and that's what this bill does. It allows 7 amendments that are germane to come to the floor, 2 Republicans and 5 Democratic amendments. And, Mr. Speaker, with that, I'm happy to yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the resolution.
The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote on the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote is objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purposes does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 2405.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 189, H.R. 2405, a bill to reauthorize certain provisions of the Public Health Service Act and the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act relating to public health preparedness and countermeasure development and for other purposes.
Does the gentleman wish to suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous materials in the record.
Without objection. Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 2405, introduced by my colleague Mike Rogers from Michigan, would reauthorize certain provisions of the Project BioShield Act of 2004 and the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Act of 2006. These 2 laws help protect the United States against attacks from chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons. Project BioShield authorized funds for the purpose of medical countermeasures through the Special Reserve Fund and enabled the Secretary of Health and Human Services to authorize the emergency use of medical products. PAHPA created the Biodefense Advanced Research and Development Authority within H.Res to help with the development of medical countermeasures and ensure communications between H.Res and the developers of the medical countermeasures. PAPA also created a position at H.Res to lead the government's efforts on the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons preparedness and response, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response. Some of these key provisions expired at the end of FY 2011. Since the terrorist attacks of 9/11, we've become more aware of the dangers our country faces and the lengths to which some may go to inflict harm on us. These provisions must be reauthorized, and I would urge all members to support this critical piece of legislation. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would yield to myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in support of H.R. 2405, the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Reauthorization Act of 2011. This bill is an opportunity to build a more prepared and resilient public health infrastructure. We all know very well that our nation continues to face threats that require an ongoing commitment to public health and emergency preparedness. And that's why over the past 10 years this Congress has placed a high priority on biodefense. In 2004, we passed the Project BioShield Act, which, with tremendous bipartisan support, Democrats and Republicans worked together to establish a process that would help our nation respond to bioterrorism threats and attacks. We then identified some shortfalls and in 2006 worked to amend the program by passing the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Act, also known as PAPA. Specifically, PAPA provided the Department of Health and Human Services with the additional authorities and resources necessary to rapidly develop drugs and vaccines to protect citizens from various medical incidents, whether accidental, such as H1N1 outbreaks, or those that are deliberate, such as anthrax attacks. The programs and activities first established in both the 2004 Project BioShield Act and the 2006 PAPA codified and expanded the federal government's support for public health preparedness. As a result of these bills and the investments that followed, our nation is better equipped to respond to bioterrorism threats and attacks. Now, H.R. 2405 will help build on that progress. The bill further facilitates the development of medical countermeasures and bolsters the nation's public health preparedness infrastructure. It strengthens and clarifies the position of Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, who has led the federal government's effort and attempts to improve coordination and accountability. And I was especially supportive of the bill's provisions to identify and dedicate the FDA's role in hazardous events. H.R. 2405 enhanced the flexibility of FDA while strengthening their emergency use administrative functions. And these revisions are a significant step forward on a framework for FDA to develop better policies and guidance in emergency situations. In addition, I was appreciative of the bipartisan effort to address the special needs of pediatric populations in emergency situations. It was clear that there were some gaps in our nation's public health emergency strategy for children, and I'm confident we took an appropriate approach for filling in these gaps. So I really want to thank Representatives Mike Rogers and Gene Green and their staff who authored the base bill and have continued to work to strengthen its provisions. I'd also like to thank the staffs of the Energy and Commerce Committee, of course my chairman, Mr. Pitts, who have collaborated in a bipartisan manner to further enhance the bill. They've worked hard to accomplish the goals of our members as well as stakeholders and to strengthen its provisions. It's been a good bipartisan process and one that I think should be emulated in our subcommittee and full committee in the future. So I would urge all members to support H.R. 2405, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I would like to yield such time as he may consume to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Rogers, the prime sponsor of the legislation.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Pitts, and thank you for your leadership on the committee to allow this bill to come to the floor today. And good news, Mr. Speaker, this bill is bipartisan, it's fiscally responsible, and it will make a positive impact on our nation's national security. It's been more than 10 years since 9/11 and the anthrax attacks that followed. And while we haven't had a successful terrorist attack on U.S. soil, our enemies are still working every day to kill innocent Americans. Today, the threat of bioterrorism remains very real. Earlier this year, the bipartisan Graham Talent Commission warned the United States is still, quote, vulnerable to a large-scale biological attack, end quote. Thankfully, we have spent the last decade preparing for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats by developing and stockpiling numerous medical countermeasures to protect American citizens in case of such an attack. Because of these efforts, we now have numerous vaccines and treatments in the strategic national stockpile that will save lives and thousands of lives in the event of such an attack. But we have more work to do to be prepared. H.R. 2405 is a bipartisan, fiscally responsible bill that will reauthorize successful biodefense programs at the Department of Health and Human Services while also making some key changes to our nation's biodefense strategy. In 2004, Congress passed Project BioShield, which created a market guarantee that prompted the private sector to develop countermeasures for the federal government. Because the government is the only purchaser of these countermeasures, it was important to show the private sector we were committed to developing and eventually purchasing these products for stockpile. Project BioShield's Special Reserve Fund has been a critical tool to protect our country against an attack. And this legislation will reauthorize the fund for 5 additional years to continue the federal government's commitment to procurement of medical countermeasures. Importantly, this legislation reaffirms that the Strategic Research Fund should only be used for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear countermeasure procurement. This is a national security priority, and these funds should never be diverted for other purposes. In 2006, Congress created a Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority called BARDA, in which helped bridge what many termed the valley of death that had prevented many countermeasure developers from being successful. BARDA was created because we recognize that most of the CBRN countermeasures do not yet exist, and medical countermeasure development is a risky, expensive, and lengthy process. BARDA bridges the funding gap between early-stage research and the ultimate procurement of products from the SRF fund for the national stockpile. H.R. 2405 reauthorizes BARDA for 5 years. In 2006, we also created a unique set of public health programs to assist hospitals, local public health departments, and first responders in their preparedness efforts. Under H.R. 2405, these programs have been reauthorized for an additional 5 years so that we can continue to strengthen our preparedness infrastructure so critical in the prevention and dealing with any possible attack. H.R. 2405 also strengthens the role of the HHS Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response. We need to have one leader at HHS that coordinates countermeasure development and stockpiling across all agencies. This bill does that. And finally, this bill includes important reforms to the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The bill strengthens FDA's role in reviewing medical products for national security priorities. I believe that if we've identified biological threats and spent millions in taxpayers' funds to develop countermeasures, the FDA must take a lead role in getting these countermeasures approved. While we can use many of these products without FDA approval through an emergency use authorization, the FDA licensure is hugely important and sends an important signal to developers of these new, hopefully, technologies and immunizations working on the next generation of medical countermeasures. Simply put, medical countermeasures for national security priorities cannot continue to be treated the same way as the next Viagra or Lipitor. FDA must accelerate their review and approval. It's important for members to know that this legislation, again, is fiscally responsible. H.R. 2405 does not create any new federal programs or increase spending in any existing programs. I'm pleased CBO has confirmed this in their score. H.R. 2405 creates a 5-year reauthorization of the biodefense programs we know are working, while making critical policy changes at H.Res to strengthen countermeasure development and public health preparedness. I'd like to thank my colleagues on the Energy and Commerce Committee for their hard work on this bipartisan legislation. Mr. Upton and Mr. Pitts, Mr. Waxman, Mr. Pallone, and their staffs have spent several months helping us develop a bipartisan bill that can be signed into law. I want to especially thank my friend Gene Green, Sue Myrick, and Anna Eshoo for their work to advance this legislation, and I appreciate your work and counsel along the way, Mr. Green. I hope we never have to use these countermeasures, Mr. Speaker, but they are critical to the assurance that the public will be protected from an attack, and we must continue to speed development and strengthen our national stockpile. Simply put, we must always be prepared. I would urge the strong support of H.R. 2405, and I would reserve the balance of the time.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd now like to yield to one of the authors of the bill, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, such time as he may consume.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank my colleagues. And just a personal aside, this probably won't be the headline on the 6 o'clock news tonight around the country, because we're actually agreeing on something, and I think I could associate myself with the remarks of my colleague, the primary sponsor of this bill, as well as he could associate with mine and Mr. Pallone and Mr. Pitts. But I rise today in strong support of H.R. 2405, the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Reauthorization Act of 2011, which will reauthorize certain provisions of the Project BioShield Act of 2004 and the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Act of 2006. And I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of this legislation. This legislation was initially passed by Congress to help the U.S. develop medical countermeasures against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear terrorism agents to provide a mechanism for federal acquisition of these newly developed countermeasures. Our nation remains vulnerable to these threats because many of the vaccines and medicines that are needed to protect our citizens do not exist. Developing and stockpiling these medical countermeasures requires time, resources, and research, all of which will be provided under this legislation before us today. As my colleague said from Michigan, it may not be the best seller on the market like some of the other pharmaceuticals, but this is something that our country needs. H.R. 2405 is important to me, too, because the University of Texas Medical Branch Galveston National Laboratory is literally in the backyard of our congressional district. The Galveston National Lab is the only BSL-4 lab located on a university campus. At the lab, the scientists conduct research and develop therapies, vaccines, and diagnostic tests for naturally occurring emerging disease such as SARS and avian influenza, as well as for microbes that may be employed by terrorists. This is exactly the type of research we hope to encourage under the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Reauthorization Act. As the original co-sponsor of H.R. 2405 with Mr. Rogers, I'm real pleased with how quickly we moved this rare bipartisan piece of legislation. And I want to thank Mr. Rogers, Chairman Upton, Ranking Member Waxman, and Ranking Member Pallone, along with our chair of our Health Subcommittee, Mr. Pitts, Ms. Myrick, Ms. Eshoo, and Mr. Markey for their work on 2405. And I strongly urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from New Jersey reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
I continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania continues to reserve.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield now to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Capps, 2 minutes.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 2405, the Pandemic All Hazards Preparedness Reauthorization Act. But I want to take this time to discuss a critical health issue that Congress must address before the year is out, fixing the sustainable growth rate issue. Medicare physicians are facing steep reimbursement cuts of nearly 30%, and to let these go into effect, these cuts will harm not only them and their employees, but our seniors as well. And that's why I've been a longtime supporter of efforts to postpone SGR cuts and continue to work on a permanent fix. We here in the House passed legislation to do just that through our version of health care reform. And here we are again, just weeks from the next scheduled cut, with an opportunity to craft a bipartisan solution to an issue that both sides of the aisle say they care about. But there is no workable plan in sight. Instead, it is reported that any fix on the House side will come with indefensible strings attached, pitting doctors' salaries against seniors, benefits, federal workers, and important cost-saving prevention programs. To be clear, SGR must be fixed permanently, but the idea of stripping other critical health care funding to pay for it, ideas that will not see the light of the day in the Senate, is like robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's disingenuous to our nation's doctors, and it is an indefensible action which will harm our seniors. So I urge the majority to stop playing politics with the health and well-being of our seniors and to work together to achieve a meaningful and realistic fix. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
I have no additional speakers at this time, Mr. Speaker, so will you?
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I have no other speakers. This is good bipartisan legislation. I'd like to thank Mr. Pallone, Mr. Green, Mr. Waxman, along with our side of the aisle, for developing and helping move this bipartisan legislation. I urge my colleagues to support and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey.
I have no additional speakers. I would yield back and urge support for this legislation on a truly bipartisan basis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yield back.
Yes, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2405 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass Bill H.R. 3237 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3237, a bill to amend the SOAR Act by clarifying the scope of coverage of the Act.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, and the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, will each control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume, and I ask unanimous consent all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, and the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this year, this body debated and ultimately approved legislation authorizing scholarships to give needy District of Columbia students the opportunity to leave their public school and enroll in a private school of their choice. Following the House's approval of the SOAR Act, the legislation was enacted into law as part of the Department of Defense and 4-year Continuing Appropriations Act, which was signed by the President on April 15th, Mr. Speaker. We're here today because there are several small and technical modifications that need to be made in order for the scholarship program to achieve its goal. This legislation would clarify 3 provisions. First, the education requirements for teachers of scholarship students. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, how the nationally norm referenced test would be administered in order to properly collect data to study the effectiveness of the program. And thirdly, Mr. Speaker, which students participate in the study. On November 3rd, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee approved H.R. 3237, the SOAR Technical Corrections Act, by a voice vote. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank my colleague, Ms. Norton, and my colleague, Ranking Member Cummings, for working with us to ensure we had the appropriate language to modify the legislation that is before us today. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I appreciate that.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I appreciate that Speaker Boehner, Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee Chair Lieberman, and Oversight and Government Reform Chair Issa, as well as my good colleague on the other side of the aisle, the Subcommittee Chairman, Mr. Gowdy. I appreciate that all of them have worked with us and have consulted with us on these technical changes, and I do not oppose this bill. I reserve the balance of my time.
Lady reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve. Not aware of any more speakers, so I would reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady.
I have no further speakers. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would again thank our colleague, Ms. Holmes Norton and Mr. Cummings, and urge our members to support the passage of H.R. 3237 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3237 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purposes does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 2297 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2297. A bill to promote the development of the Southwest waterfront in the District of Columbia and for other purposes.
To the rule. Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, and the gentlewoman from District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, will each control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although the United States Constitution gives Congress exclusive legislative authority over the federal district, in 1973, we granted the District of Columbia some significant autonomy by approving the Home Rule Act. Congress still must act, however, before the city can pursue certain activities. This brings us to the legislation before us today. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 2297 is needed to update zoning laws to allow the district the flexibility to lease or sell the real property in the Southwest waterfront to a private sector developer. There is currently a $2 billion redevelopment plan pending to renovate this area, which is only a short distance, Mr. Speaker, from the United States Capitol building. We hope this redevelopment plan will accomplish its goal of spurring economic development and bringing jobs to the city of Washington, D.C. This legislation was approved by the Oversight and Government Reform Committee by a voice vote. Mr. Speaker, I again would like to thank my colleague, Ms. Holmes Norton from the District of Columbia, and Ranking Member Cummings for working with us on this legislation. And Mr. Speaker, I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the chairman of the full committee, my good friend on the other side who's managing the bill for the committee, and the chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Gowdy, for working closely with us on this bill so that we could get it to the floor today. I also thank the ranking member of the full committee and Mr. Davis, the subcommittee chair, for their very important consultation. H.R. 2297 will allow development of the waterfront area of southwest Washington, D.C., and makes technical changes concerning land owned by the District of Columbia. The district has owned the southwest waterfront since the early 1960s, but the legislation that transferred the land to the district contained constraints typical of the pre-Home Rule period. H.R. 2297 excuse me, updates that outdated legislation to allow for the highest and best use of the land. The limitations serve no federal purpose, but the unintended effect was to make a wasteland of land that could be productive and revenue and jobs producing. Federal agencies have been consulted on H.R. 2297 and raised no objections. The bill will allow mixed-use development on the waterfront for the first time and will create jobs and raise local and federal revenue at a time when they are needed most. The federal government has no interest in the southwest waterfront other than the Maine Lobsterman Memorial and the Titanic Memorial, which the district and the National Park Service have worked together to preserve. The bill also expands the types of goods that can be sold at the fish market on the waterfront, a market well known in the region. The bill includes language that we developed with Senator Susan Collins of Maine to ensure the protection of the Maine Lobsterman Memorial, which is located at the southwest waterfront near Maine Avenue. Mr. Speaker, this is a non-controversial bill that passed committee by voice vote and removes out-of-date restrictions. It involves no cost to the federal government. I urge passage of the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers at this time and would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from District of Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back at this time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman.
Mr. Speaker, I would once again thank our colleague, Ms. Holmes Norton, Ranking Member Cummings. Mr. Davis, as my colleague so aptly pointed out, also deserves credit, the Ranking Member of the subcommittee. And with that, I would urge all of our fellow members to support the passage of H.R. 2297 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from South Carolina yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2297 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Thank you, sir.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until approximately 2:45 today.